The world is in unimaginable suffering and pain. And if you think that there's something that you're going through that no one else can see, you're probably wrong. If you're with someone that you know that maybe you hate or you don't like, maybe you think they don't have any problems, there's a good chance that there's something that they're struggling with or suffering with too. And a lot of us need help, and a lot of us don't know how to give it because we can't, because we're in this battle with ourselves that takes so much of our energy that there's not really anything left to give. And I wanted to speak on that because it makes me really sad when I think of people who suffer in the various ways that you can suffer. And just it feels like everything just hits me all at once. You know, the people who don't have food or clean drinking water, war, people getting robbed, killed over nothing, shot dead in the street. The everyday suffering of living in your first world society and struggling to keep yourself on some kind of timeline that you've designed for yourself that everyone should be able to follow. And at this age, you should have this, and kids, and you should have graduated at this time and done this, and the societal pressure that we create that makes people hate their lives, and the suffering that's accompanied with that. All these things, they make me feel very, very uncomfortable for the other people who are saying this is enough. Life sucks. It's dumb. I shouldn't be this way. I shouldn't feel this way. And I wanted to talk about two things in particular that I think are very important towards the topic of suffering: despair, depression, anxiety. The two topics that I wanted to, just rant about would be how we perceive time, the way that it passes. And I also wanted to talk about shame, and maybe a little bit on how those two things connect, if my brain can muster that ability here. Not making any cuts. So let's talk about shame. Now, this is a huge one. This is one that I struggle with. And if you struggle with shame, I can tell you right now, whatever goal, whatever thing that you want to do, it's going to become phenomenally harder, to the point that some people will never get to where they want to go. Because when you feel shame over the slightest things, you probably register it, but maybe you don't hold on to that thought, right? Maybe you didn't get to somewhere you wanted to go on time. Maybe you had a project that you wanted to complete at a certain time. And all of these other things, these expectations you have of yourself that you're not meeting. Or maybe you're doing something that you feel is shameful. It's okay to realize that something didn't go your way or something's wrong, right? That's how you make correction. That's how you take action. But when you reach a point where you're destroying yourself over mistakes that you've made, then that's when things get pretty bad for you. That's when you start saying, I can't get this right anyway. What's the point in trying? What's the point in continuing doing this thing? Or maybe because you feel shame, you don't feel like you deserve to connect with other people. And that's another thing that can be terrible. You can self-isolate because you feel so much shame over who you are, or maybe something that you've done. I felt shame recently. Raise your hand if you felt some shame. And it was because I had an expectation of what I was going to be able to do, and then I failed it. But that's not what I was first shameful about. You see, I think it's very easy in our minds to think of like a big situation or a big scenario. Okay, this thing happened. It was very bad. So this must be where everything or all my frustrations come from, which on some level, yes, you can have something big happen to you and then that can cause frustration. But to me, it was I had a task to do before completing my bigger task, right? And I sat there, I was like, I'm normally able to complete this task very easily. Why can't I complete it? And then I sat there with that thought, and then I got really upset. And that was it. It was sitting down, realizing I had a task to do, realizing that I was struggling to complete it. It was challenging for me in that moment. And that was enough to send me into a downward spiral. Right? Done. Maybe like 3-4 days of just not thinking clearly, doing everything I didn't want to do because I felt extreme shame over not completing this task, or, feeling that I couldn't complete it. I had shame over my emotion. Why am I feeling this way? I shouldn't be feeling like this. I'm this person. I have an ideal of who I am. It's like, I'm this guy. Why am I sad about this? Why am I upset about this? I'm better than this. I shouldn't be feeling this way. And I'm not saying that you can't self-motivate, because that would be ridiculous, right? Self-motivate all the time. But at the end of the day, if you're sitting down with a thought and you understand that you made a mistake, or you have a feeling, you got to be able to first accept that you're feeling it, right? I think one of the first things that I should have done is when I'm upset about this and I feel uncomfortable, and there's a reason why, right? You kind of have to validate what you're feeling, I think. I have to go like, hey, I'm sad and there's a pretty good reason why. But, and that's the important thing, but even though I feel this thing, I still have other things that I can do. I can still try something else. And I think it was the refusal to accept and the shamefulness of feeling that really pushed me over the edge. Really increased my amount of anxiety. And maybe this is somewhat relatable to you, where you're unsure how to deal with a particular feeling. Hopefully that made sense. So, something else that we really struggle with is our perception of time. How long should it take me to do a particular task? Well, I don't know. Who do we look to? What do we look to decide how long something should take? When we look generally into society and we look to other people. So we either look to general trends in society of, okay, maybe everyone graduates grade 4 at this age and then does this thing in this particular task, right? And then you start going, okay, well, by this time I should have this, and by this time I should have this. And well, to go on a small tangent, our view of time is also pretty important, because we don't live forever, right? Like, death is inevitable. Like, no one lives infinitely. So time becomes pretty valuable and something that is a constant reminder. There's a lot of videos on the internet that are like, I'm 26 and did this, I'm 27 and I'm 30, or I'm this point in my life and I haven't done this particular thing. And it's not really necessarily because it's trendy, but it's because it's a genuine anxiety that people have that they've fallen behind and that they haven't gotten where they should be or where they imagine themselves being. I did just mention a moment ago that we can use society as kind of like a guideline for where our timeline is. But sometimes we use people, and sometimes we use ourselves, and we use our expectations, right? And our expectations of ourselves can also be derived from other people or from society or from whatever ideals that we have growing up, right? And maybe at this point you can kind of see how these two concepts collide into each other pretty violently. With people who are very, very high achieving or have very high expectations of themselves and what they want to do or what they want to achieve, and not being there is extremely frustrating. It's going to bring you shame. It's going to bring you a lot of pain and a lot of guilt over what you could be. And maybe that guilt that you have is attached to so many different aspects of your life, right? Like, really depends on who you imagine that person could be. Well, like, what could they do? You might ask that question. I have a goal. I have a timeline that I've created in my head of where I should be at that goal. When I'm at that goal, then I'll be able to do all these awesome things for people. But since I haven't made it to that goal, now I can't help people. And now I can't be useful to the people around me. And then, of course, your shame and guilt just goes boom, just like a freaking pyramid shooting up to the sky. It doesn't know what to do with itself because you're in so much pain now. Because now it's not just the fact that you lost time because you didn't complete a task. You're shameful. You're including the shame from the emotions that you're feeling, from not completing the task, from not being the person that you want to be. And you don't know what to do with that. You might be watching this video thinking, is he going to get to an answer? Is he going to say something at some point that goes, hey, this is what I should do? Let you know right now, I have no idea what you're supposed to do. But I can tell you this. When it comes to that feeling of shame, I think in order to improve it, you need to acknowledge that you're feeling a thing. I'm feeling this thing. There's a pretty decent reason why. Okay, start there. I think that's a healthier approach rather than sitting down with something and then fighting yourself because you just hate that you're feeling stuff. People can act very differently when they feel shame, when they feel guilt. There's some people who smartly seek aid and they seek help. This is a smart thing to do because it gives people a chance to rant, gives people a chance to vent, gives people a chance to speak and kind of take their subconscious thoughts and make them conscious, which is why a lot of people feel a lot better after they're done ranting or whatever the heck. Because, oh my goodness, for once I can kind of expel it without it clouding up my brain. It's very difficult to do alone for a lot of people, right? And then there's another subset of people who are like, I feel so shameful right now that I don't want to talk about these things with anybody, which is a lot of people, I think. And also, that comes from kind of this weird ideal that if I'm going to show up somewhere, I should show up being acceptable, right? And what's acceptable? Well, being normal, feeling normal, having normal emotions and behavior, or what we deem as normal and what we say socially should be normal. So, I mean, why are people going to want to share stuff that isn't normal? They're not going to want to share it. So then they suffer in silence, and then they create all these other problems. Now, one thing that I feel really guilty about is I want to understand suffering, right? And, you know, I mentioned all the different ways that you can, not all of them, but you can feel pain in so many different ways about so many different things. And it really upsets me to know how helpless I feel. The fact that I feel like I can't make any change. And maybe I'm too messed up. Maybe I have too many problems. Who am I to try and speak to people who are suffering? What could you do? It runs through my head a lot. And then I think, damn, what could I do? Well, I mean, I want to understand it, right? I want to understand suffering. I feel like that's a good place to start. And so, I try and do things in my life to make it less comfortable. And I keep trying to do that. And I feel like it's the only way for me to even accept a small grain of responsibility. And that's a weird way to think, maybe, but it's like I look at how much people suffer involuntarily without choice. And people wake up every day in extreme pain, physically and or emotionally. And I'm like, okay, well, at the very least, I have to be willing to be uncomfortable in situations. I don't think I should indulge myself in hedonistic activities all the time. I don't think I should eat the tastiest foods, I don't think I should skip my workouts. I don't think I should take warm showers. I should make them cold. I think as many things as I can do to be uncomfortable and to feel something, I think I should. And I don't think that even doing all of these things or whatever things that I think are going to make my life more uncomfortable might even bring me even close to the amount of pain that people have to deal with. Right? There's some really messed up stuff that can happen out there, guys. Really terrible stuff can happen to people. But that's just a bit on the way that I think. I just think about how I can get closer to trying to understand it. You know, it's... Anyway. Okay, now the video's over. Okay, goodbye.